Hey everyone, it's Matt Schlapp with America UnCanceled, and we have a very special episode today because we had an amazing delegation come from Brazil. And what a lot of Americans don't understand is the same kind of weaponization of the bureaucracy that we're seeing here in Washington, D.C. with Lawfare, the attempt to put Trump in jail, the attempt to put Trump supporters in jail, all the outrageous behavior around the J6 committee. Similar things are happening in Brazil, and we're here with Congressman Marcel Van Hatten, and he, it takes a lot of courage, first of all, to take this trip with this delegation to America because, literally your political views are not acceptable with this new terrible president of Brazil and his henchmen, this Supreme Court justice. So, Congressman, why don't you tell us a little bit what's going on in Brazil right now and how it's similar to what Americans are facing?
Well, what we are being accused of at the moment is of being anti-democratic. That's what they say.
Here they say democracy is under threat.
Yeah, of course. But they are the ones who actually are not only threatening democracy, but destroying democracy in Brazil. And what we see in Brazil right now is a more subtle way of doing it, because instead of coming from the executive branch, from the president himself, the threats or the acts against democracy and against rule of law come from the Supreme Court. We have to actually look a little bit back in time to understand it better. It was only because the Supreme Court nullified the cases in which Lula was convicted in 3 instances of the Brazilian justice that he was actually allowed to run again against Bolsonaro. Lula was put in jail in the year 2018.
What was he put in jail for?
Well, he was put in jail for money laundering and corruption. Mm-hmm. So there was a huge corruption scandal in Brazil. Operation Car Wash uncovered it. It was a very successful operation.
But the judicial branch
in 2015.
But the judicial branch in Brazil was never controlled by conservatives or by Bolsonaro supporters. So this was a legitimate.
Well, it was a legitimate process.
It was a legitimate
yes, an independent prosecution. Yeah, and it started in 2015. The Operation Car Wash went all the way up unto President Lula and put many other politicians in jail on the left, but also on the center, also businessmen. Not only in Brazil, by the way, many transnationals that were involved in the corruption scandals were also functioning abroad, like in Peru, Guatemala, and their former presidents were also put in jail there, mm-hmm. or were investigated. So it was a legitimate investigation. Lula was put in jail in 2018, but in 2019, what we saw is that this corruption scandal was reaching the judiciary. This was when whistleblowers started to implicate members of the Supreme Court, like Dias Toffoli, in bribing schemes. Mm-hmm. And Dias Toffoli, when saw this news on Cruzoé magazine, what did he do? He claimed it was fake news.
Yeah.
And he opened an investigation in the court censoring that magazine for fake news, yeah. and started an investigation which Mr. Alexandre de Moraes would be the rapporteur. And this meant that this one judge was at the same time the victim, because he was representing somehow the court that was victim of fake news. He was also the investigator and, of course, the judge.
Yeah.
This is not investigation. This is inquisition.
That's right. So,
and that's what we have in Brazil now for 5 years. The investigation is still open. Can you believe that?
So January 8th, let's fast forward. January
Sure.
8th occurs. There's a protest at your legislative chamber, a little similar to what happened here on 1/6. I think I heard the phrase, it got out of hand. People, their passions overtake their situation. Property crimes happen, other things happen. How many people have been arrested in Brazil associated with those kinds of protests around a highly irregular election like we had here in America?
Well, to start with, people were outraged about the fact that we had Lula as president or becoming a president again after all these corruption scandals, after being put in jail, and people were legitimately protesting in front of the army headquarters, not only in Brasilia but throughout the country. I was one of the few that was actually against this form of protest. I said these people should, instead of being protesting in front of the army headquarters, they should go to Congress and ask senators and legislators like us to take action against the abuses of power, of authority that the Supreme Court was performing. However, this was not the choice of the people. We have to respect it. And it ended up after Lula took office on the 1st of January with these terrible events of January 8th. But here's the thing. Those people who went to protest peacefully, they were there to tell Brazil and tell the world they were not in favor of the Lula government, and it went out of hand, and we have to, of course, criticize all those who did vandalism, those who broke things. We do not accept this on the left. We would never accept this on the right. But truth is, the government did nothing about it, because the government was warned by more than 40 instances within the very government that something could happen.
So very similar to America, where nobody was surprised that there was a protest at our Capitol.
Yeah.
But Nancy Pelosi, then the Speaker of the House, and others didn't listen to President Trump when he asked for the National Guard to be called up, etc. So like it's almost like they wanted the protest so that then they could say, "Oh, these people are violent and dangerous."
You know where Lula was that day?
Where?
He took his airplane and went to Araraquara in São Paulo, 1 hour and a half flying, a city where that is governed by an ally of his.
Yeah.
That was damaged by a flood 3 weeks before, so there was no urgency in going there. And from there, he made his speech saying
so why
that
did he do
was.
That? What's your point? He went.
My point is, he knew in advance.
Yeah.
I can, not only he knew that something would happen because the government warned from its own instances from within, but also the other sectors of the government, including the Ministry of Justice that was commanded by Mr. Flávio Dino, who now was appointed by Lula to become a member of the Supreme Court, a communist, and he was from the Communist Party. He also did nothing, and he said he saw everything happening from the window of his office. Right. Can you believe that?
So how many people have been arrested approximately?
Well, approximately 200 and something on site. Some of them claim that they went inside the buildings because they wanted to protect themselves. They saw everything going on, and probably if I were there, I would do the same. What would you do? You would take shelter if you see the police coming and bombs and so on.
Right, of course.
Many people were arrested only next day in front of the army headquarters after having slept there because they've been sleeping for many days. They've been, staying there.
So how many total, when you go through
all
this?
More than 1,500 people
have been arrested.
And
how many of those?
Many of them, just this is an important detail, many of them arrived in Brasilia only at 8 p.m. in the evening after the events took place.
Yeah.
So why were they put in jail?
And how many people are being investigated or being pursued still?
We don't have the exact numbers right now. We're actually doing our best to have it all put on papers to have the correct numbers, but certainly thousands of people now.
Could you be arrested upon your return?
I can.
Just for speaking out about these things, because they consider those crimes. You're not allowed to have independent political thought in supporting Bolsonaro or his policies. And the court is actually going after people speaking in the media and members of the media because they believe the government will determine what's truth and what's not and what's fake, right?
The only thing that protects me right now from being arrested and remain in jail is that because I'm a member of parliament, after being arrested, the parliament has to put to a vote my prison and has to say yes or no to it. That's the only thing that protects me as a representative.
Yeah, because you have some immunity. You have some immunity as a congressman.
That's all I have, because our leader of the opposition is not in the United States with us right now, because he had a season in arrest. Search and seizures. He had a search and seizure
I understand.
In his place. and had his passport taken.
We understand,
that's why he's not here.
We understand exactly how this works because they do this. The Department of Justice here is doing the same things with people associated with the protests on J6 and also people who've been associated with Donald Trump. And they tell CNN when they do their raids into their home to take their laptops and their phones and all their documents and everything else. So unfortunately, this kind of fascism, totalitarian police state tactics are not just happening in Brazil, but they're happening here. And I think it's really important for our viewers to understand that the Democrats are really the socialists here in America, talk about how they're defending democracy and that people who support Trump are threatening democracy. It's just the opposite. They are afraid that the people will speak up and support Donald Trump. And they're trying to stop Donald Trump. And the only way they can stop it is to make him a criminal. And so they use the judicial system in order to do that. Do you think that Jair Bolsonaro will go to jail?
Oh yeah, I think this is their plan, for sure. And the only thing that really prevented it from happening so far is because he's very popular, and last February 25th was able to put hundreds of thousands of people, after just 10 days of calling them to the streets, on the Avenida Paulista in São Paulo.
Yeah, we see the videos.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
But CNN barely showed them.
So could we safely do a CPAC in Brazil, or would it be unwise?
I would definitely recommend you to do, because we need it.
Yeah.
It's not unwise, but we have to be careful for sure.
Yeah. Pack
Took all necessary measures, and but it's no point of defending freedom if we're not willing to take risks.
Congressman Van Hatten, we so respect you standing up for freedom in your home country and for making it very clear to people what's at stake. We say that we're against globalism at CPAC, but it doesn't mean that we don't have incredible friendships in these other key countries around the globe. And we pray for you and we stand with you. And hopefully we'll get to see you down in Brazil soon.
God bless you.
Thanks, everyone. We're going to continue to bring you special programming about these tragic events in Brazil, and we thank you for your